Yes, we see how this conflict has actually changed the geopolitical landscape. And Arno was just talking about the previous period of time characterized by different types and forms of interaction, while we could see that there was always kind of a frozen conflict that was frozen after the World War II, and pretty much it was frozen from the one side, the one representing NATO, that was still trying to expand and still was actively trying to get new members and to promote the goals of weakening Russia and making sure that it's encircled by the military bases, and that it always has pressure being applied to it. So the current happenings at the global arena are changing the let's say the strategic approaches, and just recently with the publication of the new American military doctrine, we see a shift in priorities, and we see a shift in priorities towards more of practical goals, as the direct or let's say the proxy confrontation with all of the intelligence and all of the let's say technologies being put in place on the Ukrainian side against the Russian military were not proving to be as effective as they probably were believed to be. So the confrontation on the ground has shown that it's not as easy as it could have seemed to achieve success against Russia. And I think it's one of the core facts that have been affecting this decision-making process, and also, of course, the economic benefits and the profits that are being lost at the same time with the sanctions and with the need to constantly change logistical means and all of those factors. This is also definitely affecting the decision-making process. But Europe in this paradigm is now seeing itself being alone at the warmonger side. Let's put it that way. And it's only Ukraine that is actively supporting that approach, because not to mention the shift or the change in the US policy, we also see the key countries, or let's say the biggest countries of the global south, also supporting the moves towards peace and supporting the moves towards a new world order that would be built on cooperation principles and on the principles of multipolarity, that in this context would definitely imply more of respect for actual interests of the countries and more of attempts to actually consider those, because the let's say the hegemony or the system, when it was possible to push through any kind of misleading information and any kind of misleading approaches, is seems to be almost over. Yes, it is true that a very significant percent of Ukraine's GDP was provided by those regions in the east of the country, the Russian-speaking regions. And if you go a bit back in history, you would also notice that those regions have become a part of Ukraine not too long ago. And that was also a decision aimed at empowering and increasing the potential profits of that part of the USSR at that point, right? So there was quite a lot of policies aimed at redistribution of resources and making sure that those different regions are receiving a more balanced economy. That's number one. And number two, at that point, and even now to a certain extent, those regions and their infrastructure, including energy infrastructure, production chains, let's say, and all of those processes were much interconnected and, let's say, interdependent. It was more or less the same logic with the Baltic states and Caucasus, and it took a while to kind of restructure it. And if you look at the trade balance, for instance, before the escalation of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, you would see how much of economic exchanges and how much of trade was actually happening there, and how those processes were broken, including some of the production processes and energy infrastructure and many other things that were damaged or ceased to exist as a result of the conflict. So Ukraine definitely cannot be called a beneficiary of this situation. Because the aid that it was receiving, I mean, even if you just simply look at numbers, even with the aid it has been receiving from the United States and from the European Union, that never became an investment. I mean, that money just dissolved. It didn't remain anywhere in, let's say, infrastructure or anything physical that could have been used by the current or the upcoming generations, unlike the investments made in infrastructure during that previous period of time. And even if you look at Donetsk itself, the city was founded not too long ago. It's less than 100 years, and it was designed to be an industrial center aimed at production of aimed at mining and production. So there was a clear infrastructure design, not just for Donetsk as the biggest city of the Donetsk People's Republic, or Donetsk Oblast as it used to be called back when it was still a part of Ukraine, and a lot of interdependent processes in those regions that were ensuring economic and social stability, providing work, providing profit, providing social welfare, and so on. So yes, on the one hand, it is true that those regions are, let's say, in those terms, worth a fight also because they're producing a lot, unlike the regions of the west of Ukraine, that mostly that the economy of which is mostly based on let's say tourism and other kinds of income that is not directly related to production or mining or such things. So it is painful to lose that on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's something that has been very largely mismanaged in that period of time when Ukraine itself was in charge after it gained independence. And the same can be actually applied to Crimea, because when Crimea was still a part of Ukraine, it was mismanaged and it was not receiving investment. It was not receiving much of attention from Kiev. And the conflict itself, when it started breaking out and when it was escalated in 2014. Some of the reasons for that were also related to the fact that under, let's say, Kiev, those regions were not receiving much of attention. They were still giving a lot to the national budget, and they were not receiving much. And then they were receiving this kind of treatment when they were always worse than the regions of West Ukraine, let's say. And this is one of the disbalances that is very obvious. And if you go to Crimea, you will notice that most of the infrastructure and like most of the buildings were either, and it's obvious when you look at it, they were either built in the Soviet times or else in the recent, let's say, 10 years when Crimea rejoined the Russian Federation. So you will see that there is a huge gap in those times when Ukraine was in charge, and of course it was leading to quite a lot of frustration and disappointment from the point of view of the people. The same thing is valid even for this complicated period of time when when the countries are still at war, Donetsk and places like Mariupol and DPR and LPR, generally speaking, they're receiving investment, they're getting improvements in terms of road infrastructure, logistical infrastructure, governance, and many other things. And people see that, people notice that, and they compare it with what it could have been if they were still, let's say, on the other side. And obviously, each citizen in the first place is thinking about, their prospects and prospects of their children. So it's a very clear conclusion when you just get to numbers and facts and clear comparison.